All right, so it's 7 o'clock on Monday, July 18th, 2022, and I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Okay, seeing none. Before we get to the minutes, we'll just go around the room so everybody can see who's here. So if I could get closer, you just push that button there. Everybody should be able to see everybody at the front and on the side there on the main camera. And in the back row, we have Johnny Pereira, our treasurer, and then Coulter Cahill, our public works manager here as well. And then as you see on the screen, Councillor Clark and Councillor McKinnon are joining us via Zoom. Alrighty. As well, something that's really exciting that Morgan has asked me to share is that this will be our last council meeting where the gallery will be closed to public. So future council meetings, if anybody is watching live on YouTube or watching this later on, the gallery will be open for the public to attend. So that's pretty exciting news. So we have the minutes of our previous meeting, and those were held on June 20th. If we have a mover and seconder for those minutes. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Brody, all those in favor. And that's carried. And we will start off the agenda with the delegations and timed events. And the first one is the Municipal Comprehensive Review, or MCR. And we have Stuart Finlater here of Finlater and Associates, Inc. And I'll hand it over to Stuart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. Pleased to be here this evening to present the findings of the Municipal Comprehensive Review, which we've been working on over the last year or so. And so as I understand it, I'll go through my report tonight. Mike's got the PowerPoint presentation he's going to pull up shortly. I'll go through it, give you the key findings, and then open up for any discussion or comments that any member of council may have. So I've worked closely with the County of Middlesex, with their staff, and with Morgan at your municipal office in order to complete this document. So with that, Mike, if you can pull up the PowerPoint. Okay, so the next slide, Mike. So basically, what I'm going to do tonight is just run through a quick introduction, a quick overview of what a municipal comprehensive review is, touch on the key findings from the data research that I've completed, and as I said, have a discussion at the end and look at the next steps the council wishes to pursue. So the next page is an introduction. So again, I'm Stuart Finlater, project manager. I established Finlater Associates Inc. upon my retirement from Thames Centre after 35 years in the municipal field. And I've done a number of projects in this regard, and it's keeping me busy, to say the least. Assisting me with the project, with the mapping and the charts and figures in the document, Kevin Shea from the County of Middlesex. And I've also had some involvement in discussions through the course of this with Dirk Van Werf at the county. So go to the next page, Mike. So what is an MCR, Municipal Comprehensive Review? It's something that you're required to do every 5 years when you're looking at updating your official plan. What it does is it makes sure you have a look at current provincial policy as was put out there in the PPS, the provincial policy statement, which was updated last in 2020 by the province. So a number of things have changed in that document that gives guidance to council, and you need to be cognizant of that. And in the end, your official plan is a document that's supposed to guide growth for the next 25 years. So it's important that when you do update it, that you make it as current and as relevant as possible. All right, so next page, Mike. So these are the topics, as I said, I'll be just briefly touching on today. I know you've got a busy agenda. You've had the report for a little while now, but I will just go through and touch on each of these items briefly. So in the policy context, really there's 3 areas that we need to be cognizant of when you're doing an update like this. That's a provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and of course your own local official plan. So the provincial policy statement As I said, it was released, the most updated one was May 1, 2020. And it provides direction for land use planning and appropriately managing growth and development in Ontario while protecting natural resources and features based on a 25-year planning horizon. In regard to urban growth management, the PPS generally directs new growth areas located within urban settlement areas on full services. And it's got policies in there regarding managing and directing land use to achieve efficient land use patterns. So things like sufficient land shall be made available to accommodate the appropriate range and mix of land uses projected to meet the needs for a 25-year time frame. It talks about settlement areas being the focus of growth and development. And it talks about providing a variety of housing types in the municipality. And according to the PPS, settlement areas and urban and rural settlement areas include towns, villages, and hamlets, and they can only be expanded if there's a need identified to show that. The PPS also talks about employment areas, and it basically says planning authorities, which is local councils, shall plan, protect, and preserve employment areas for current and future uses and ensure that the necessary infrastructure is provided to support current and projected needs. As far as the county official plan, it states again that the majority of growth in the county is to be directed to designated settlement areas in accordance with the county's growth management hierarchy. In this case, the county does not currently recognize any of the hamlets within Adelaide Metcalfe as designated settlement areas. But the county is currently updating their official plan, and as I understand it, maybe adding Kerwood as a recognized settlement area in the updated plan. And again, with Adelaide Metcalfe official plan, again, there's a consistent theme here. Majority of growth in the township should be within the community, urban, and hamlet areas, especially in areas where services can be provided at a cost-effective and environmentally responsible manner. And also to promote the retention and expansion of existing businesses and the attraction of new business to the township to provide a balance of residential and employment opportunities and short and long-term employment stability. So that's the policy context in which we undertook the review. Now, as far as growth and development, if you can go to the next slide, Mike. So the historic population growth for the township of Adelaide Metcalfe, it shows on the screen right now. And you can see that it shows the township has experienced population loss over the 20-year period from 2001 to 2021. The population sits at about 3,000 people at this point in time. Fortunately for us, when we started this project, the county of Middlesex had just retained Watson and Associates to update the population housing projections for all the local municipalities. And under the reference scenario, which is what they do when they're doing population housing projections, do a low, a medium, and a high. And the medium projection is referred to as the reference scenario. So in that reference scenario, they've indicated that the population will increase to about 3,600 people in 2046 in Adelaide Metcalfe. And that shows up on the next slide, Mike, if you just want to flip that over. So, you know, you're looking at adding about 400 people in the next 25 years, according to the research done by Watson and Associates. The average age in Adelaide Metcalfe, just for interest's sake, is about 40.7 years of age, and that's similar to the province as a whole. As far as housing, Watson and Associates completed the updated housing forecast based on the updated population projections for each of the local municipalities. And they do that by taking the ratio of the total population projection divided by the total households, and that's referred to as the persons per unit, or PPU. And that shows up on the next slide, Mike, if you want to flip it over. And again, you can see here that the growth, the PPU is on a declining scale here. That's happening all across the province and all across the county. And it reflects, they're hoping that that'll be moderated, that it won't go down, it won't continue to go down as much as it has over the last 20 years or so, because of an anticipated increase in the number of young adults and children that are migrating to the county from other areas of the province. And that scenario is considered likely to occur in Township of Adelaide Metcalfe as well. So given these numbers, Watson projects the 2046 housing forecast will result in a total of about 1,360 households by 2046. That's an increase of about 340 units over that time period. As far as the location of residential development, again, as you are all well aware, the municipality is comprised of two main residential areas, being Kerwood and Adelaide. There are four smaller hamlets, Napperton and Pike, Napier, Walker, and Cairngorm. There's been very limited growth in the smaller hamlets, and in fact, a lot of the growth, the development for residential purposes in recent years has taken place out in the rural area. So the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe, like most other rural municipalities, is facing a number of population and household trends that are anticipated to influence the housing demand over the short and the long term, and those include aging population, continued reliance on vehicles, fewer people living in households, continued attractiveness to those wishing to relocate for more expensive housing markets, rising cost of housing, continued pressure on supply, increased demand for housing options other than ownership of single unit developed dwellings, and the possible long-term impacts of COVID regarding the work from home trend. Historically, the types of residential development that's taken place in Adelaide Metcalfe has been predominantly single detached dwellings. Watson and Associates are predicting or projecting a gradual shift to more medium and high density housing based on demographic trends across the county. While you have not received applications for subdivisions or condominiums since 2018, which indicates that while higher density development is occurring in other municipalities across Middlesex County, Adelaide Metcalfe may instead continue to see low density development in your area. So if you can flip to the next slide, Mike. So as far as the housing starts, so total annual housing starts in the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe between 2016 and 2021 has historically been quite low, as evidenced by this chart that you see. So during this period, permits for dwelling units range from a low of 2 in 2016 to a high of 13 in 2019. And close to half of the dwellings constructed in 2019 were located in the Grogast Court development. So in accordance with the Middlesex County official plan, local municipalities are to provide the county at least every 5 years with a summary of its supply of vacant land designated for future residential development to ensure that a sufficient supply of lands is maintained. While there are no current potential or existing building blocks and lots in draft approved or registered plans of subdivision, there is vacant designated lands available to accommodate future growth. And so in the next few slides here, which we can, Mike, if you can just pull up. So Adelaide, for example, this just shows that Adelaide has about 7.3 hectares of vacant lands that are designated for residential development. If you go next slide, Mike. And in Kerwood, there's about 12.5 hectares. It's not designated residential, but it's designated future development. And one would assume that the majority of that will end up being residential development at some point. So you've got about 12.5 hectares there. Next slide, Mike. So in Cairngorm, there's about 11 hectares of undeveloped lands that are within the existing hamlet settlement area that can accommodate growth. The next slide. And in Walker, there's about 5 hectares in total inside the existing hamlet settlement area boundary. Next slide, Mike. And in Napperton and Pike, there's a little over 1 hectare in those parcels that are not being developed that could accommodate future growth. And then the final one is, next slide, Mike, would be Napier. And again, there's just about half a hectare of land available there. So in total, undeveloped lands designated residential or future development in the township that are not the subject of active draft approved or registered plans of subdivision amount to about a little over 37 hectares of land. And that's just been illustrated on those previous figures that we've just looked at. So when you when you calculate the amount of land that can actually be developed for residential purposes, you have to take into account that there's factors such as some individuals may not be willing to allow their lands to be developed, even though they're designated. And on top of that, you have to take into account within those developments, there's land going to be used up for local roads, for parklands, for stormwater management, right-of-ways, and so on. So when we look at that and we take into account generally what percentage of land that makes up in each development, we're suggesting that you have approximately 25 hectares of land, net hectares of land that can be developed for residential purposes inside existing settlement areas. So when you look at the projections for housing needs of 340 additional housing units, and accounting for the lands that you've already got available that have not been developed, it suggests that the township needs about 27 net hectares, and you've got 37 net hectares available. So at this point, there's certainly no need for any expansions to any of your settlement area boundaries to accommodate the projected growth over the next 25 years. Okay. The next area I just want to talk about is very briefly is the special policy areas and the commercial corridors. And again, they are outlined in the report. So current Adelaide Metcalfe official plan contains 7 special agricultural policy areas and 2 special urban policy areas. And within these special policy areas, use are permitted that may not otherwise be generally permitted within your zoning bylaw. So in 2019, there was questions raised by council members and members of the community regarding the appropriateness of these policies. And I'm not going to go into any details on each of these areas now as they're covered in the report. And I know council is very much aware of the situation regarding these matters, but it's my recommendation that council proceed with the amendment that was provided to you in the March 2020 county planning report, where they detailed and laid out what was taking place on each of those special policy areas and what they recommended should be done. And I would agree with those recommendations that were contained in that report. And similarly, while I do touch upon the commercial corridor in the report, I don't think this is the place or the time necessarily to discuss that in any more detail unless council wishes to do that. As part of the review, we also looked at what's taken place in the provincial policy statement in the County of Middlesex official plan since the last update to your official plan. And there were a number of new provincial planning initiatives that I think should be considered for inclusion when you do look at updating your official plan, which I understand is recommended to be done in 2023. So those include things such as on-farm diversified uses, additional residential units, the cultivation and retail sales of cannabis, and modular / prefabricated housing and tiny homes. A couple of those issues are, additional residential units. That's not an option, that has to be done. That's where the province has indicated that anywhere where there's a residential unit, you're allowed to add an additional unit in that, and you're also allowed to have an additional unit in an ancillary building. So you can have a maximum of 3 units in any residential zone that allows a dwelling. So that's a requirement. That's not an option. The rest of these other ones are things that I think you just want to have a look at, and I've gone into them a little bit more detail in the report. So as far as official plan policies, the recommendation that I've got in the report is that council implement the proposed amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw provided for in the March 12th, 2020 County Planning Service Report. And that was attached to the report as Appendix 1. And as I said earlier, those recommendations, in my opinion, provide sound land use planning advice and would address current inconsistencies between the official plan designations and the zoning on the subject lands. So I'm suggesting, after having a discussion with with Morgan, that is that item 1 on the screen there now should be done. I would recommend you do that immediately. The rest of those recommendations, I'm suggesting that those are matters that should be considered as part of your actual official plan update in 2023. So that would be looking at on-farm diversified uses, which will permit and encourage such uses consistent with provincial policy and guidelines. So you do allow like secondary farm occupations and that sort of thing now, but on-farm diversified uses are a whole different creature basically. And the province is, I think, still working through exactly how that is to be implemented. But there are some ongoing studies that, again, I outlined that in the report. But I think it's something you should have a serious look at, including in opening it up for more than what's allowed as far as a secondary farm occupation. Again, to implement specific policies related to additional residential units, and that you look at policies regulating the location of cannabis grow operations and sales. You may or may not have any now. I'm not sure if you do, but certainly there's a number of issues that can arise with those if you don't have any policies in place as far as separation from sensitive land uses and that kind of thing. And then again, finally, just the prefabricated and modular and tiny homes. Again, that's an issue that's really come up in the last year or two. It's about affordability and helping allow first-time homeowners to actually get into a house, or for people that want to downsize and not move into a big city from where they grew up on a farm or whatever. So I think those are other policies that you should have a look at in the course of your OP review. So I think, Your Worship, that's the extent of the presentation I've got. If there's any questions or comments, I'd be pleased to try and answer them.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. A lot of information, a lot of time went into this. I want to thank you for doing that. And I know that you've been a busy guy. You've been doing this at a couple other municipalities as well in the county. Is there any questions at all from members of council? Not seeing any. We're most likely all waiting to have our thoughts and opinions and questions probably during that official plan review period that's scheduled for 2023. If there isn't any questions at all, we do have a recommendation in front of us, and that is that council receive the municipal comprehensive review report and presentation completed by Finlater and Associates Inc. And further, that council directs staff to proceed with the official plan amendment process as outlined in Appendix 1 to bring the Adelaide Metcalfe official plan in conformity with the 2020 provincial policy statement. And further, that council directs staff to initiate the full Adelaide Metcalfe official plan 5-year review process in 2023. We have a mover and seconder for that. Deputy Mayor Hendricks. Oh, we have a question. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, can you put the Appendix 1 back up on the screen for me?
Yes.
And I apologize, I have COVID brain, so I'll just put that out there, but I apologize, I'm a little off my game. So this is not the employment land study? Or is it?
Morgan.
Councillor Clark, the employment land study was included as part of the municipal comprehensive review, where Stuart looked at not only our employment lands, but also our residential stock.
So that's what this document is, correct?
Yes, it's a portion of that. Yeah.
Okay, it's just there was more into it, so I think that's where my confusion lay earlier on in the day. Okay.
Yeah, we started to look at an employment land study as part of council's direction, I believe in 2021. I think it was early 2021. And then because we were walking towards an official plan 5-year review, we thought it best to just do the municipal comprehensive review, which included a look into our employment lands.
So just for further clarification, Sue, so the Appendix 1 is the report from March 12th, 2020. So if you remember way back, it was the last meeting before we went into COVID times. So is the Kerwood, the meeting that we had a public meeting in Kerwood, and it was all the recommendations that our planner Aaron Besh and the other planner was there as well. I can't think of her name, Abby. And and they had those recommendations for the special policy area reviews. And that is what that recommendation is to go forward with those recommendations that were presented back in March of 2020.
So would it be prudent to wait till the county passes theirs and then we do it all at one time when we do our official plan and not bother adopting this separately tonight?
So what we're asking for council today is Councilor Clark, it's a good idea to do it all at the same time, but there are some legislative requirements around the ARUs. So those additional residential units and some other items that probably Aaron can speak more to in terms of alignment with the 2020 provincial policy statement. So what we're looking to do is get ahead of some of those legislative requirements, get an official plan amendment in front of council that would outline how we would come into conformity with the 2020 provincial policy statement, bring that back to council, because then we're basically biting off small chunks rather than doing a big 5-year review update at this time, and then move into the spring of 2023 and undertake the actual 5-year official plan review and update. Aaron, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to touch on from that March 2020 report that speaks to that.
Thank you, Morgan. No, I think that you're right. There's just a couple items that have been legislated through Bill 109 and some previous bills that our policy documents just are not up to date on. So while we do need to undertake an entire review of our official plan, there are a couple key elements that we do need to incorporate into our policies sort of at this time. Depending, we've had a lot of interest in ARUs. I think that it's very prudent that we have it put in place as quickly as possible. And, even though we're undertaking the official plan, it's kicking off in the spring. It may not be till the end of the year when the policies are actually put into place. We also, another item that I think is important that we include in our official plan review, our quick housekeeping amendment is a nod to our site plan requirements. So the province has recently, as you know, the delegation has been moved to a staff member. There's also some other items that need to be incorporated into our policy documents to ensure that our site plan process is beefed up a little bit. So I hope that helps a little bit, but happy to answer any more questions.
Okay, is there any other questions? I'm very confused now, I'll be honest. So we are now, and I'm not sure if anybody else is. So the motion that I just read out is that we receive the report, the review and the report from Stuart. The second part is that we proceed with the official plan amendment process as outlined in Appendix 1, which is strictly to do with the report in 2020. And then the last part is that we direct staff to initiate a full review in 2023. I don't see where the ARUs come into effect at all right now in a housekeeping OP update. Yeah, Stuart.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I think Aaron's made a good point. I think that is something, even though it may not be in that motion, I think that is the ARUs are something that you should probably deal with as soon as possible. So in addition to looking after cleaning up the properties that were dealt with under the March 12, 2020 report, I think you would also at the same time include policies on ARUs, and that would just get that done. And it's pretty well legislated. It's not an overly difficult thing to draft. and then follow up in the spring with your overall 5-year review, if that helps.
So it's really.
Okay, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I have no problem making a motion to receive the report. If you want to break that up into 3 sections, I have no problem receiving the report. I think now that I had more clarity, I'd like to reread that document for a 3rd time and see what I'm struggling with and bring it back to the next council meeting.
Okay, so we haven't had a mover and seconder, I don't think, for this motion, have we? No. Okay, so we'll break it out. So we'll go with the first one there. And Councillor Clark, you wanting to move that we receive the municipal comprehensive review report and presentation completed by Finlater and Associates, Inc.
Yes.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. The next section there is that council directs staff to proceed with the official plan amendment process as outlined in Appendix 1 to bring the Adelaide Metcalfe official plan in conformity with the 2020 provincial policy statement. That's why I'm really confused.
Yeah.
So we're going to break that out. So we're just going to go with the first part there. Further, that council direct staff to proceed with the official plan amendment process as outlined in Appendix 1. Which is that March 2020 report. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor?
Opposed?
Opposed?
I need to read this more. So I'm opposed right now, just.
So this is what Councillor Clark was talking about. She wanted to reread the report and the appendix before we brought this motion back to council at the next council meeting, I believe.
Yeah, so I just wanted to receive the report as presented. And now that we've had more clarity, I'd like to read it with new eyes with that information, just because I was reading it a certain way and there was some confusion, and I'm not comfortable voting on it just at this point. I might be next month, but I mean, I just think I'm not feeling as informed about this as I should be to make a good vote on it.
Okay, so it was moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hendricks. So I'll do this again. All those in favor? Okay, and opposed? I'll change my vote to allow Councillor Clark to read through that again, and that's defeated. And then we'll bring that back. Councillor Clark, do you want to make a motion that the report be brought back at the next meeting?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Brody. So that Appendix 1 will be brought back to the, I guess that would be the April or August 8th, I believe. So that was moved and seconded. All those
Can I
in favor?
just ask one question first? Sorry.
Yep.
When does the county look at when is the county approving theirs? What's in front of them right now?
The official plan, it is in draft bylaw form for tomorrow. So it should be approved tomorrow.
Okay. That'll work then. Thanks.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. And then the next one there, which is, are we strictly looking at the inconformity to the 2020 provincial policy statement, which is just the ARUs? I'm looking probably at Aaron Besh, our planner.
Uh,
Or do we want to look at
yes,
that?
there's a couple things that we will need to look at for that.
So we'll bring that back.
Okay.
August 8th.
Perfect. We'll bring that back as well. And then the last one would be that council direct staff to initiate the full Adelaide Metcalfe official plan 5-year review process in 2023. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. And I couldn't help but laugh when I read 2023 5-year review, because since I've been on council, which is since December of 2010, we have never done a 5-year review. So it's more like a 13-year review. Alrighty, so I think we finished with that. Thank you so much, Stuart, for all your help and information on doing the MCR.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, thanks. Alrighty, so the next report for our delegations is our 2021 audited financial statements from Graham Scott Enns. We have Jennifer here. Johnny, do you want to do an introduction? Anything you want to say before I hand it over? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the council, as Mayor was saying, we have Jen and Scott here. I think we had a good audit this year, much quicker than prior years. I'm sure you're used to seeing this. I think last year was passed in November. So I think this is quite the accomplishment, bringing this in July. So I'll turn it over to Jen and Scott to present.
Thank you very much, Johnny. If someone can give me the ability to share my screen for when I go through the statements, and while I wait for that to happen, I will introduce Scott Westlaken. It's his first time attending the council meeting here with me this evening. He is a manager from our office, has worked on this file for the last few years with me, and I think he's pleased to be here tonight to see the full council presentation experience. So I will walk through the draft financial statements. We have reviewed these previously with management to get feedback. I will present some of the highlights as usual, but of course I'm open to any questions that council may have this evening. After I present the draft financial statements, I will make a few general comments about the audit overall. So it looks like I can now share my screen, so I will do that. Okay, so these are the draft financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021 for the Corporation of the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe. This first page, this was new to the financial statements last year. It is no different than anything in the past. It's just a new page required in the statements that indicates management's responsibilities for financial reporting. And after the financial statements are approved, it will be signed by Johnny on behalf of management as the treasurer. It just indicates that all the information that we as auditors have been provided is accurate to the best of management's knowledge. In terms of the independent auditor's report, this is what we, Graham Scott Enns, have been engaged to provide to you, members of council, as well as the inhabitants and ratepayers of the Corporation of the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe, and I will read out the audit opinion. We have audited the financial statements of the Corporation of the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe, which comprise the statement of financial position as at December 31st, 2021, and the statement of operations and accumulated surplus, statement of change in net financial assets, and statement of cash flows for the year then ended, and notes to the financial statements, including a summary of significant accounting policies. In our opinion, the municipality's financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the municipality as at December 31st, 2021, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with the Canadian accounting standards for public sector entities. So that in the auditor's world is a clean audit opinion. The remainder of the audit report talks about the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance represented by council, as well as the auditor's responsibilities. Assuming the financial statements are approved this evening, they will be dated today, July 18th, 2022. Turning to the statement of financial position, this is a snapshot of the financial assets and liabilities of the township as at December 31st, 2021. And I'll just comment on a few of the items as I go through. Cash balance comparable to prior year as our investments. Taxes receivable, we see an increase. That increase is primarily relating to the current year balance, but largely relates to a single balance. Accounts receivable, again, a comparable balance year over year. Total financial assets, $10,061,000. Under financial liabilities, most of the balances we see are comparable. There is an increase in deferred revenue, and you can see the breakdown of that in note 5. And that's the result of funds that have been received in the year or previous years, but not yet spent at December 31st, 2021 and available for carry forward. So that does include gas tax and top up, as well as some of the COVID restart funding. Net long-term liabilities, we see the continuing repayment of that each year. And then we have the landfill closure and post-closure liability, and we're going to talk about that a little bit further when we get to note 8. So total financial liabilities, $2,234,000, net financial assets, $7,826,000. In terms of our non-financial assets, tangible capital assets, we see an increase over prior year as a result of $1.8 million in additions There was a walk-in rescue truck, as well as some significant road work on Denning, Napier, and School Road. There was minor disposals and then amortization expense of $934,000. The inventories and prepaid expenses are comparable to prior year. So total non-financial assets, $19,690,000, accumulated surplus, $27,517,000. I'm going to continue on to the statement of operations and accumulated surplus. First thing I'm going to remind everyone of is that in note 16, we disclose the budget. So there's the original budget as approved by council for council purposes, and then we make some adjustments to the budgeted numbers to be in accordance with PSAB, public sector accounting standards, and then the budget that's disclosed here is considered a PSAB compliant budget. So a little bit different than the original approved budget. And you can see those details in note 16. In terms of some of the increases or changes in revenues, there was a rate increase, so property taxation has increased a bit. In terms of user charges, relatively comparable to the prior year. Local improvement levies, so in last year there was a significant balance relating to drain billings. Under government transfers, one of the biggest differences you'll see is other municipalities. So within the budget, there was the budgeted amount for joint building services, and that was not realized during the year due to changes in operations. In total, the revenues for the year, $6,138,000, roughly comparable to the PSAP budget, $6,176,000. Turning our attention to the expenditures, this is the breakdown by different segments. Most of the balances relatively comparable to prior year and budget. Looking under other protective services, again, we see a significant decrease there, both from budget and prior year, and that's the impact of the joint building services, which were in the prior year, and operational changes in the current year. In terms of transportation services, there was a decrease in materials and supplies and contracted services compared to budget and prior year. Health services, it's a small number, but it did decrease significantly, and that's relating to the cemeteries and contracted services. Most of the other balances relatively comparable to prior year, planning and zoning up, relating to projects that were undertaken. So total expenditures, $5,004,000, a little shy of the budget expenditures of $5,404,000. Annual surplus for PSAB purposes, $1,133,786. Accumulated surplus at the beginning of the year, $26 million, end of year, $27,517,000. I'm going to pause there just to make sure I haven't missed any questions or anything. Looks good. Okay. Continuing on, statement of changes in net financial assets, really just an accounting exercise to show how the net financial assets are calculated. Similarly, the statement of cash flows is an accounting exercise to show the use of cash during the year. And then we get into the notes to the financial statements. Note 1 is a summary of significant accounting policies. There have been no significant changes to accounting policies this year, so no changes to what we've disclosed here. The only thing I will remind Council of, and I believe I've mentioned this in the past, because it has changed since the timing has changed previously, is this new standard relating to financial instruments, PS 3450, which is going to apply for next year. So fiscal years beginning on or after April 1st, 2022. So the December 31st, 2022 year end will be the first year end that this applies to. And it has been delayed, this standard, due to COVID, but this time I think it's actually going to happen. So we need to be aware of the changes that will bring to the financial statements next year. And I know Johnny is well aware of this, and we'll be working closely with management on identifying the impact. Continuing through the notes of the financial statements, taxes receivable, I'll pause here briefly. As I was mentioning, when we looked at the statement of financial position, you can see that the primary increase in taxes receivable does relate to the current year. And as I mentioned, that's relating to one specific property. Deferred revenue, note 5. So I was mentioning here, we have a significant increase, the bulk of which is relating to federal gas tax. And within this other amount are some of those COVID funding amounts that I was mentioning. Note 8 is the landfill closure and post-closure liability. It's a little unusual because in this case, the Metcalfe site, it says date landfill is expected to reach capacity 2020. Obviously, these are 2021 financial statements, so that is now in the past. And this is based on the last actuarial report that was prepared. What we have added here is this sentence: the Metcalfe site has not been used since December 2019, and it is awaiting ministry approval for its formal closure. So we have acknowledged that as well. The other thing I will point out is as we reach the end of these landfills, that there is the reserve in place. It's currently at 293,000 at December 31st, and the estimated costs are less than that at this point in time. So that's always a good position to be in. In terms of tangible capital assets, I mentioned the road work and the vehicle addition. The only other thing I wanted to point out was included in work in progress, WIP, is the work on the Kerwood Park Phase 1. Note 10 is accumulated surplus. So you can see the breakdown of the general revenue fund, benefiting landowners, which is the drains, invested in tangible capital assets, and then reserves. And here is the details of all the reserve funds at December 31st, 2021. So then you can see how you get to the accumulated surplus, 27,517,000. Okay. Next note I just wanted to pause on was note 14, contingent liabilities. This is our standard disclosure when there are legal actions pending, just indicating that the final outcome cannot be determined at this time, but management believes that it will not materially exceed the amounts recorded in these financial statements. Budgeted figures, note 16. This is where I mentioned that the first column is the approved council budget. We then make adjustments in order to end up with a PSAB budget, as disclosed in the statement of operations. Note 17, this is our pesky COVID note. It is hanging around for another year as the municipality does consider to be slightly impacted by COVID, in particular still receiving some COVID related funding. So this is just the standard note disclosure that you're exposed to economic risks associated with the coronavirus pandemic. It's obviously beyond your control, and the overall impact of these risks cannot be identified. I would anticipate we won't see this note anymore December 31st, 2022, knock on wood, but I think it is prudent to keep it here for this year. Note 18 talks about the different segments and what they include, and then we go to the schedule of segment disclosure at the end of the statements, which is just a different way of presenting the revenue and expenditures and getting to that same accumulated surplus of 1,133,000. Those were the highlights that I wanted to point out in the financial statements. I know it was a quick presentation, but if anyone did have any questions, I would be happy to try and address them.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Is there any questions at all from members of council? Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I don't know if this question would be for you, Jennifer, or maybe more for Coulter. Excuse me. Are there costs associated with getting the ministry approval? Is there actually 25,000 earmarked for that, or that's just a placeholder?
So I think you're referring to the estimated closure costs.
Yeah.
So this figure from my perspective is from the last report that was done estimating those costs, but I know there has been more recent communication with the ministry. So I agree that maybe management could comment further on that.
Yep, Coulter or Johnny?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Councillor Clark. That was part of the landfill closure plan that we had to pay the consultant to help us develop the plan. So right now it is with the ministry for approval, and that won't cost anything.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, do you have any other questions, Councillor Clark?
I do, but I'll save them for when Johnny does his report because it might dovetail into that. There are more questions about what's going forward, not what the document is in front of us. So I'm good.
Okay.
I like the statements. They look good. So
All right. Is there any other questions at all? I don't see Councillor McKinnon on that list. Maybe she has her hand jumping up and down. I don't know. Sorry, Councillor McKinnon, do you have any questions at all? I don't see you on the screen. Sounds like a no.
Okay.
No, I have no questions. As usual, Jennifer has done a good job in laying a confusing document out in front of us in an understandable fashion. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. And before we let you go, you said you had your colleague, Scott's there. I'm sure you didn't want to just show up and listen to Jennifer talk. Is there anything you wanted to add?
I mean, overall, I would say I'm just happy with the progress that I think Johnny, Jennifer, and I had working through the audit this year, and I'm looking forward to proceeding and going through it again next year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Jennifer.
Can I make my other audit related
Oh.
comments? I promise they'll be quick. So in addition to presenting the draft financial statements, I do provide an audit findings letter to council. It is a no issues letter, but I still think it's important that I mention that. That means that we had no significant disagreements with management, no identification of significant control deficiencies, no suggested alternative accounting practices, and no unadjusted differences. So I wanted to share that with you as well. I know a no issues letter is not exciting, but for councillors, that's a good thing. The other thing we did issue as well to management was a management letter, which is just our recommendations on improvements. I know that's something that the current treasurer, Johnny, has been working hard at. And so we've acknowledged some of the progress he's made and is continuing to make on changes to policies. So that letter has been provided to management as well. So those were my final comments on the audit overall.
Perfect. And those are two very good letters for council to see and also the public to see as well. So thank you. All right. If there's nothing further, we have the recommendation that council approve the 2021 audited financial statements as presented. Councillor Clark and Councillor Brody, all those in favor? And that is carried. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, so we are now under the Committee of Adjustment, and we need a motion from council that council convene as the Committee of Adjustment for the purpose of hearing applications for minor variance A02 2022 and applications for consent B05 through to B08 2022 at 7:53. Okay, Councilor McKinnon and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor? And that's carried. All right, so before we jump into the first one, and that is going to be the minor variance A02 2022. The purpose of the following Committee of Adjustment and public meetings are to give the Committee of Adjustment and council, as well as the general public, an opportunity to hear all interested parties with respect to the applications being heard this evening. The public is advised that comments expressed in written material presented are a matter of public record available for full disclosure. If a person or public body files an appeal of the decision made this evening to the Ontario Land Tribunal without having made a written submission to the committee and or council, the tribunal may dismiss the appeal. And if you wish to be notified of the decision in writing, please submit a written request to the clerk. So the first one we have in front of us, as I mentioned, is A02 2022, and we have Wanda and George Lawrence from 28325 Central Road. George or Wanda, are you able to hear us and or see us?
Yes, we are.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to hand it over to our planner, Aaron Best, to go through the report, and then we'll get to any additional comments from you before council makes a decision. Aaron.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the first application this evening is a bit of a combo. We have our minor variance application, which also aligns with a zoning bylaw amendment. So I thought I would go through my report, which touches on both. And then, of course, we enter into the council time to deal with the zoning. You will have a wonderful idea of what's going on, and I won't need to perhaps go through it again for a second time. So the purpose of the application for zoning is to allow the owner to continue to live in the existing dwelling while a new dwelling is being built. For reference, I will share my screen and bring up a map. I always forget to do this. I apologize. Here we go. Sorry, where did it go? Boy. Okay, I'm going to just continue with my report. Sorry guys. The application is looking to allow the owner to remain in their current dwelling while a second dwelling is built on the property, whereas the bylaw would normally only permit one dwelling to be located on the subject land. The existing residence would be removed upon the expiration of the 2-year period or the occupancy of the single detached dwelling that is newly constructed, and whichever occurs first. So the zoning bylaw amendment proposes to amend the zoning from the urban residential UR zone to include a temporary use provision T-13, which is next in our sequential line. And this will facilitate the construction of the dwelling on the property. And at the end of the expiration date of the zoning bylaw, the lands will return to the underlying urban residential zone. The minor variance is in association to this zoning in that it is seeking to relieve the applicant from section 11.2 of our zoning bylaw. They are looking for a reduced interior side yard setback from 3 meters to 1.6 meters. And this is to allow additional room on the northern part of the dwelling for a driveway to access the rear of the property. They're interested in building an accessory structure, perhaps down the road a little bit. The subject lands themselves are 1 acre in size and they contain a 1,200 square foot single detached dwelling on public services. It also contains a shed and a shop, which are to be removed to facilitate the construction of the new structure. The subject lands are located within the residential area designation of our official plan and within the urban residential zone of the Adelaide Metcalfe zoning bylaw. So it's my opinion that the application is consistent with the PPS and conforms to the policies of the township's official plan, as the intent of the application is to permit 2 dwellings on a single lot for a temporary period of time. The application is consistent in that way, and further, the proposal will conform with the criteria for temporary zoning bylaw in our official plan. The applicants are also required to enter into a temporary use agreement with the township and to post security in order to ensure that the existing dwelling is removed upon completion of the second. So the applicant has indicated that they wish to post security at a later date, as they are interested in construction in following spring and not actually this year. So staff recommend that a first and second reading be given to the implementing bylaw, with the third reading being given closer to the end of the year when the agreement and the security are in place. So through the minor variance application, I reviewed the proposed side yard setback in according to section 45 of the Planning Act. I am satisfied that the application meets the 4 tests in order to grant a minor variance. The application was circulated as per the requirements of the Planning Act. We did receive a comment from the chief building official just in regards to the requirement of the $10,000 deposit. And he also advised that the existing dwelling would need to be removed 90 days from occupancy of the new dwelling. I have not received any comments from the public at this time. So my recommendation this evening is that application for zoning bylaw amendment be approved and given the first and second reading, with the third reading to be given once the applicants have provided security and the temporary use agreement. and further that the application for minor variance be approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. George or Wanda, do you have anything you'd like to add at all?
No, I think it was very well put. Thank you very much.
Yes, we're fine. And thank you very much, Aaron, for all your work.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions or comments from the Committee of Adjustment? Okay, so in front of us, this is just for the minor variance is what we're looking at right now. And the recommendation is for the application for minor variance A02 2022 be approved.
I'll move that.
Okay, moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that's carried. All right. And then George and Wanda, if you want, you can stick around, but I'll assure you that when it comes down to your zoning bylaw, I believe that council will not have an issue with approving that. And as Aaron has already noted, she's gone through that report as well. So if you'd like, you can stick around, but if not, that's understandable as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to your council.
Okay, thank you. Before we jump into the next one, Aaron, you mentioned it was 90 days for the removal of the other dwelling. In our bylaw at the end, it has 60 days. Just wanting to make just if we can look into that, just to make sure we have the right amount of days in the bylaw. So the next consent applications in front of us is application for consent BO 567 of 2022. And I believe we have Jacqueline Costa here representing the JF Homes Construction Limited. Jacqueline, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you. Joe is also with me.
Okay, excellent. All right, I'll hand it over to Aaron to go through the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of these applications is to create 6 residential building lots from a larger vacant parcel on Pike Road, County Road 45. So the application for consent, the first one, B05, proposes to sever lot 2, which will separate the retained lands into 2 separate parts, lot 1 and lots 3 to 6. So I'm hoping that this my description is a little more helpful. So the second application, application B6, is looking to further subdivide lots 3 to 6 by severing lot 4, which would then leave lot 3 and lot 5 and 6 as the retained lands. Finally, B7 proposes to sever lot 5 from lot, and then lot 6 would then be the retained lands for that final one. So all of the lots are proposed to be the same size. We're looking for a lot width of 26.8 meters, lot depth of 100.27 meters, and a lot area of 2,687 square meters rather. The property is located on the west side of Pike Road, just north of Napperton Drive. It is classified as a collector road under the jurisdiction of the County of Middlesex. The subject lands are currently vacant of buildings and structures and do not appear to have an existing access off of Pike Road. The applicants are proposing to sever the lots on private services, so we would have well and septic systems for each parcel. I note that verification of access to potable water, as well as suitability for private services, sanitary services, should be addressed as conditions to the severance. So through the pre-application consultation process, I did reach out to our county engineer in relation to the proposal. So the county engineer has advised that the lots would be required to be developed with shared driveways onto Pike Road rather. And in support of this requirement, the applicants, we are also requesting to establish the easements, the access easements on each of the lots as part of this consent application. So a subsequent application would not be required. The county is also requiring the dedication of 1-foot reserves along the remainder of the lot frontages to ensure the driveways are limited limited to just the areas with legal easements. So the subject lands themselves are within the urban area boundary as identified in our official plan within the residential use designation, and they're currently zoned general agriculture in the zoning bylaw. The application was circulated as per the requirements of the Planning Act. So the chief building official advised that lot grading plans are required to be provided from a qualified engineer, which show the building, well, septic system, lot grading and drainage, and foundation elevations. Septic details will also be required for each lot. And each location of the sewage system and wells would be provided on that lot grading plan as well, so we can ensure adequate setbacks between both. The drainage superintendent advised that the lands are within the watershed of the green drain, and the applicant will need to submit a request to have the drainage apportionment completed through an engineer. From the county, we are also looking for a dedication of lands up to 18 meters from the center line of Pike Road to the county of Middlesex for the purposes of road widening if the right of way is not already to that width, and that is to be confirmed by the owner. The owners will also be required, of course, to dedicate the 1 foot reserves along the remaining frontages and to establish on title the legal access easements between each of the shared driveways of the properties. St. Clair advised that they do not have any concerns with the application and do not contain any regulated lands on the property. No comments have been received by the public either. So the PPS county official plan and our local official plan direct that settlement areas should be the focus of growth and development, subject to appropriate servicing. So I am satisfied that the proposal can be considered sort of rounding out of the settlement area. I wouldn't necessarily include this as infill development, as it is sort of on the cusp of the urban area boundary. However, I've chosen the words rounding out of the settlement area for this purpose. The applicants will be required to demonstrate adequate potable water and suitability of the lands for sanitary, which would satisfy policies within our official plan. I have also evaluated the lots based on frontage and size and find that they're generally consistent with existing lots in the neighboring area. To ensure that the severances are approved, a rezoning of the lands will be required from the agricultural zone to urban residential. We're looking for a site-specific zone on that just to recognize the deficient lot frontages, which is required to be 30 meters in our zoning bylaw, but we are asking for 26 and change for these lots. So I am also recommending that the applicant be required to demonstrate lot grading and drainage as per the requirements of our chief building official and all of the requirements that the county engineer has laid out as well. We are also looking for a survey plan demonstrating the proposed lot lines and land dedication, which is to be reviewed by the township prior to depositing at the land registry office. So my recommendation this evening for the applications is approval based on or subject to the 14 conditions that I have outlined in my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Jacqueline, do you have anything you'd like to add at all?
No, I think Erin did an awesome job saying what the application is all about. And we are excited to work with her if this gets passed.
All right. Is there any questions or comments from the Committee of Adjustment? Okay, Councillor Brody.
Just clarification on one thing. So I thought Erin said something about shared laneways, and then I'm on this next page 7, and each property has their own individual laneway. It's not a shared laneway, correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Brody, they will be required to have shared accesses. So what that will look like, it will be 6 meters in total for each driveway, with 3 meters dedicated on one property and 3 meters on the other. So they, as soon as they're on the properties, they can deviate, they can do whatever they would like with the driveways to wherever they'd like them to go. However, they are required to have them just a maximum of 6 meters at that shared boundary between each of the lots.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Clark.
So when we saw the lots, there was the shaded area. To me, it almost looked like they have a shared on both sides of their lot. Is that correct? Or is that shaded area not the shared driveway?
Through your worship to Councillor Clark, I believe that they do have hatched areas where the easements would be. I cannot recall if perhaps you are correct. So I do apologize. That was my mistake. I didn't review the GIS map. It will be just one shared easement between each of the 6 lots. So 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, each of them will have 3 meters wide and 10 meters deep of a legal access easement.
So the document you brought up, half of those would be removed from that picture, correct?
Yes.
Or
yes.
close to that. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Brody.
Through you, Mayor Smith, is that something that Jacqueline and Costa, you're fine with the development of shared driveways?
We are fine with doing what county is requiring us to do for safety purposes.
Okay. If there's no other questions, we have the recommendation in front of us with the 14 conditions. If somebody wants to move that. Okay, Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. Any further discussion? Just to make a comment, just going along, if I could, along with Councillor Brody, I tend to agree that the shared access ways through with those lots, I'm not fond of that idea. I wasn't really fond of it the other time that we looked at it as well over on Napperton. I did have a long conversation with Chris Training, the county engineer, today as well in regards to that. And I do understand where he's coming from and why that's there. And I just want to be sure that the applicant as well, you are okay with that condition being in there. And I think you did indicate that. I just wanted to make sure that that's correct. So Jacqueline, yeah.
Yeah, that is correct. And from our conversations through Aaron and with the county, it's our understanding that that's what we need to do to satisfy county conditions. So we're fine with moving forward with that.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. All right, so that was moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to seeing your lot there on Pike get developed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, so the next application in front of us is consent BO8 2022. And we have Ashley Podolinsky here, and that is the agent from VHB, and that's for 2988 Malferry Drive. Ashley.
Oh.
Ashley, sorry, Ashley, you're here. Yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Aaron. Actually, Ashley,
Okay, that's right. Sounds good.
Sorry, it's been a long day. Apparently, I'm going to throw it over to Aaron.
Thank you, Worship. So the next application before the committee this evening is for consent B08 2022. We are looking to permit the severance of a residence from a larger farm parcel, which has been deemed surplus to the needs of the farming operation. Subject property is approximately 40 hectares in size and located on the north side of Malferry between School and Pike Road. The applicant is proposing a lot frontage of 230 meters or 755 feet in an area, sorry, I'm reading the incorrect area here. It's 82 meters of frontage, 269 feet, and a lot area of 0.7 hectares or 1.7 acres. The lands proposed to be severed contain a single detached dwelling, which was constructed in the 1960s, and 2 sheds to be included along with the dwelling. There is a grain bin also on the residential property, which is to be removed. So the dwelling is privately serviced with an individual septic and well, and it does have access onto Ferry Drive. It's sort of a U-shaped driveway. It actually has 2 driveways. Sorry, 2 accesses. So I will advise that this aerial photo is from 2020. So that long, narrow building is no longer there. It has been removed, and I do have a condition just to address that a little bit further in my report. But just so there's no confusion, it is no longer actually there. So the lands proposed to be retained contain just agricultural land and crop production. There is a wind turbine as well, and a manure pit. And Ashley can speak to, if she can clarify afterwards, if I think there was one that's been filled in and one remaining, but she can clarify after for me if she can. Either way, we are addressing them as if neither of them are. So the application, sorry, the property is within our agricultural area and is zoned general agriculture. So as per the requirements of the Planning Act, we circulated the application. The drainage superintendent has advised that the subject lands are within the watershed of the ward drain and will need to submit a request for a drainage apportionment through an engineer. I have added that to the recommended conditions this evening. The Public Works Manager has advised as well that there appears to be an existing access from the remnant farm parcel further down Ferry, so he has no concerns with the application. The Chief Building Official provided several comments, primarily to deal with the structures that are on the property. He is looking for confirmation that the demolished barn has been completely removed and the site has been restored, including any removal of remnant concrete on the property. He's also requesting that the grain bin on the severed lot be removed. The dwelling is to be confirmed to be habitable. Confirmation be received that the well and all hydro poles will be wholly contained on the severed property. And that confirmation be received from a qualified contractor that the septic system is wholly contained on the parcel being severed as well. That the site be cleared of any debris which would not comply with the municipality's property standards, and then any manure pits on the retained land be filled in, and the determination be made that if the concrete from the tanks need to be removed at that time. St. Clair Region Conservation Authority advised of no concerns with the application. Enbridge did provide us with their standard comments that they have service lines in the area, and if the severance should impact the location of any of those lines, it is to be removed and reconnected at the expense of the property owner. No comments have been received by the public on this application. So the PPS, County Official Plan, and Township Official Plan permit lot creation to dispose of surplus farm dwelling farm dwellings. I'm satisfied that a farm consolidation has been achieved, and the applicant's agent has demonstrated that the farming operation contains more than one agricultural property and more than one agricultural dwelling. I've also evaluated the accessory buildings that are proposed to be kept on the severed lot. I'm satisfied that they satisfy the requirements of the official plan in that they appear to be structurally sound and are located in proximity to the dwelling, so no agricultural land will be taken out of production to include them in the residential lot. I do note, however, that the structures exceed the maximum allowed accessory area permitted in the surplus dwelling zone, which is 75 square meters. So at the time of rezoning, we will need to have a site-specific zone which recognizes the size of those structures and ensure that if there are to be any other accessory structures in the future, it needs to be dealt with through a minor variance application. So the applicant has advised that there is a potential interest for a seed dealer business on this property. I note that the only permitted uses in the surplus dwelling zone are bed and breakfast establishment, single detached dwelling, home business, or an accessory use. And any deviation from this list would require a rezoning. Confirmation of setbacks between the existing single detached dwelling, septic system, accessory buildings, and any new proposed lot lines will need to be further examined for conformity through the submission of a draft reference plan. And if should there be any additional deficiencies, we can deal with that through the site-specific zone as well. So I am satisfied that the application conforms to the requirements of the surplus dwelling severance. And my recommendation this evening is for approval, subject to the 16 conditions that I have included in my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Ashley, is there anything you'd like to add at all?
No, I think Aaron covered all. I just do want to confirm that, yes, the one manure pit is filled in and the other one is going to be filled in. So that's, there's no issues. Went over the conditions and everything looks fine on our end.
Okay, excellent. Is there any questions at all from members of the Committee of Adjustment? Okay, seeing none. On my agenda, and I'm just confirming with our clerk, we have 17 conditions, but you said there was 16, Aaron, just wanting to make sure everything's good with our clerk. Maybe we just split one out into two different ones.
I'm sorry, I pulled this report right from the agenda.
I say it looks like number 2 on the agenda is an add-on, just consent shall be accompanied by a written submission. That details of conditions, that's it. That one's not on the report. At least that's what I noticed.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, that's not doing that is something I usually do anyway. So.
Okay. So we're going back to the original 16. So we'll get rid of that number 2 that's listed on the agenda then. All right. So that's the recommendation is for approval with the 16 conditions. Mover and seconder. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Brody. All those in favor. And that is carried. Okay. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you.
And with that, that's the end of our Committee of Adjustment. So we need to have a motion to adjourn the Committee of Adjustment at 8:23. And that's carried. And then we'll do another motion to go into our public meetings for zoning bylaw amendment Z04 and Z05 at, let's say, 8:23 as well. Okay, Councillor Brody and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor. And that is carried. And then we'll jump back into the application for Wanda and George Lawrence for 28325 Central Road. And that's the temporary use. Aaron, I think we went over that. Is everybody okay with moving right ahead with that recommendation? And that recommendation is that zoning bylaw amendment Z04 2022 be approved and given the first and second reading with the third reading to be given once the applicants have provided the $10,000 security deposit and that the temporary use agreement has been completed. Okay, Councillor Brody and Councillor Clark, all those in favor, and that's carried. And then the next one, we have the zoning bylaw amendment, which is a temporary use Z05 2022 for 623 Salisbury Street. Okay, and we have the applicant on the line? Are you able to hear us at all?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. I'll hand it over to Aaron to go through the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of this application is to allow the owner to continue to live in the existing dwelling while a new dwelling is being built, whereas the bylaw would normally only permit one dwelling to be located on the subject land. So the existing residence would be removed upon the expiration of the 2-year period, or the occupancy of the new single detached dwelling, whichever occurs first. So this application is proposing to amend the zoning from the general agricultural zone to include a temporary use provision, T-14, in order to facilitate the construction of the other dwelling. And at the date of bylaw expiration, the lands will return to the underlying general agricultural zone. So Section 39 of the Planning Act allows the township to authorize temporary use of lands, buildings, or structures for any purpose that would otherwise be prohibited by our zoning bylaw, up to a maximum of 2 years. So the Planning Act also stipulates that the township has the authority to require the owner to enter into an agreement and to post security to ensure due performance. Section 3.1.3 of our official plan authorizes council to pass temporary use bylaws to permit second dwellings as well, on condition that adequate private services are provided to the satisfaction of the township. I'm satisfied that the subject application is consistent with the PPS and conforms to the county and township official plan. The application was circulated as per the requirements of the Planning Act. We received a few comments from the chief building official. The first being that a $10,000 deposit will be required and the existing dwelling will need to be removed 90 days from occupancy of the new dwelling. I will confirm that stipulated time, as you pointed out, Your Worship, in the first application. The drainage superintendent advised that the proposed building envelope is outside the setback from the Conservation Authority. So this property is within the cable watershed or watershed of the cable drain, and the landowners are able to outlet their sump pump and stormwater into this drain. The St. Clair Conservation Authority advised of no concerns, barring the fact that the house remains outside of the regulated area. So my recommendation this evening is for approval, and that first, second, and third reading be given as the security deposit and the temporary use agreement have been prepared.
Okay, thanks so much, Aaron. And do you have any questions at all? Do you have any questions at all? Is it Dieter?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments from members of council? Okay, seeing none, pretty straightforward. So we have the recommendation in front of us for approval, and that the bylaw be given the first, second, and third reading as the applicant has provided the $10,000 security deposit and the temporary use agreement has been prepared. Okay, Councillor Brody and Councillor McKinnon, all those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, I think that is the last thing for planning stuff. Is that correct, Aaron? Excellent. All righty, thank you so much for coming. Just need a motion to adjourn the public meeting at 8:28 and reconvene in regular session. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Clark, all those in favor? And that's carried. All right, so correspondence. So our upcoming conferences, seminars, and meetings. We have a Biz After Biz from the Strathroy District Chamber of Commerce, and that's coming up on Thursday, July 28th, and that's hosted by the Middlesex Federation of Agriculture at the Gemini Sportsplex in Strathroy. Our next regular meeting is on Monday, August 8th at 7 o'clock, followed by Tuesday, September 6th at 7. Recommended readings. The first one is the Blue Water Recycling Association Board of Directors June 2022 meeting highlights. And number 2 is the County of Middlesex County Council June 14th, 2022 highlights. The next one is the Middlesex London Health Unit Board of Health June meeting highlights. Item number 4 is the Solvable Bayfield Conservation Authority Board of Directors June 16th meeting highlights. as well as the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority Board of Directors June meeting highlights. Alrighty, going into action required, we have a resolution from the County of Frontenac, and it's the Community Schools Alliance. Okay, next one on that one is a resolution from Hastings County expanding the Amber Alert system. Councillor Clark.
I'd like to support that.
Okay, and do we have a seconder for that? Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks. Is there any discussion at all? All those in favor? And that's carried. And then the last one is a resolution regarding the climate emergency declaration. Okay, nobody's jumping up and down for that one. We will have a motion to receive and file item CC 1 through to 6 and 8. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, so we'll jump into our staff reports. And the first one on our list is in regards to the mutual agreement drain for the early Parker drain. And I believe that one will be coming back to our next meeting. So I'll go into the consolidated fees and charges bylaw, and that is from our clerk, Mike.
Thank you to the mayor and members of council. Pretty straightforward report, although it got pretty complicated as we got into this. It's a little bit like opening Pandora's box, I'll say, of all the discussion that it prompted. But it was time that we put in a bylaw, a consolidated fee bylaw. We haven't had one since 2014, and fees haven't changed since that time. So in review of other municipal practices and fees, and a look at our own bylaws, we developed a new fee bylaw for council's consideration. The changes, new and changing fees are outlined pretty thoroughly in the report. Moving forward, you can understand why the fee bylaw is important, a consolidated one. Number one, it does give transparency to the public about what our fees are. Just even administratively, we can have a full review each and every year with the treasurer circulating the schedules. Every department look at their schedules accordingly, index them, look at different municipalities. So the schedules or the fees are all in one place for us to review. And as the plan is to moving forward each and every year, we'll repeal the previous one, adopt a new bylaw. Any amendments within the year will be have that fee bylaw amended and consolidated and posted to the website, and then year over year we'll change those with index. So it's just a much more efficient way and transparent way for municipal fees. There are, like I said, a few changes and new fees. Each department can speak to their fees. I would say one of the most important changes in that, and you'll see in the wording of the bylaw, is some of the planning changes. Any planning fees outside of the normal fee and tariff for planning fees will be the responsibility of the applicant. We do have, it's been recently updated within the last few months. Each of our applications does have a municipal cost statement, but this further strengthens that ability to put costs back on the applicant in that regard. So those are especially for planning applications that get a lot more complicated than your average one. We've seen a few lately with peer reviews and those type of things that can get expensive. So I think, you know, the changes that have been made are to get closer to fee recovery and cost recovery. And each department can speak to their own schedules. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
All righty, is there any questions at all? Councillor Clark.
Yeah, first of all, I'd just like to say you've done a great job with those fees, because to your point, we need to do cost recovery and user pay, and that's how it should be. If you compare our municipality to other municipalities, We weren't collecting fees where they were, and in some cases ours are still quite a bit below neighboring municipalities. The one question I have, and it's just, I just didn't know what the entry was. It was Schedule B number 25, and it was, I forget the wording of it, something about telecommunications. So is that charge?
Yeah,
If I want to set something up on my farm and give internet to all my neighbors, or what exactly is that?
Statement of concurrence, yeah. So it's pretty standard throughout municipalities to have that charge. And it is in conformity with most around, but it's just when those companies come to look for us to review and issue a letter of concurrence for them, which is required under the federal guidelines for us to issue that. It does for our review and consideration. It is $1,000. So.
Okay, so it's cost recovery for time and to prepare that document. Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions at all? Okay, seeing none.
So I will add, that we have landfill fees. We will need to communicate these fees out. We will be putting on our website and social media and the upcoming newsletter. There is a few changes, and I would say the most impactful probably right away is landfill. And just to add, we will be taking a closer look at both that and the park. We just wanted to get closer to cost recovery at this time.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we have the recommendation in front of us that council approve the proposed fees and charges. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
I just note that the open burn violations, I believe those are all new fees, and probably that needs to be communicated also, that I mean, we do have a burn ban on right now in Middlesex, so if people want to burn their garbage instead of go to the dump, it's going to cost them a lot more than a dump fee.
Agree.
Okay, perfect. Okay, as I was saying, that council approved before I get in, is there any other questions?
Is there room on our like the fire department, is there room on the sign that they can put up there that we've got a burn ban on right now? I know that's not part of this report, but anyway, we'll come back to that.
If it's not, somebody will make sure that gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that being said, we need a motion that council approve the proposed fees and charges in implementing the enacting fees and charges bylaw. Okay, Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favor, and that is carried. Alrighty, we'll move into the next report, which is the phase 1 improvements for the Kerwood Park completion, and I'll hand it over to Coulter.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Smith. My report tonight is just kind of closing out the Kerwood Park improvements, phase 1. As we all know, construction of phase 1 of Kerwood Park started in 2021 with the new facility that included the new pavilion, 2 accessible washrooms, a kitchenette, mechanical room, and storage room. This project carried through to 2022. With phase 1 of the Kerwood Park improvements completed in June of 2022, there were multiple changes to the contract during construction, as well as some added engineering costs. Some of the change orders that we dealt with in phase 1 of the project were concrete changes, a gas line interference at the Kerwood Road during sewer connection, removal of additional concrete slabs, electrical upgrades, including panel changes and service wire to the new pavilion, and some added engineering costs. The township is seeing an increase in park rentals every week, and staff has received an abundance of positive feedback on the new facility and added grounds maintenance this year. We are still working through some of the kinks that come with new facility, as well as some changes after receiving feedback from residents. Items we have been working towards are confirming the toilet height, which is confirmed and meets accessibility and code. Screens for the pavilion, those are to be reinstalled. Signs for the washrooms, designed per building code. Size of washrooms, sorry, designed per building code. They are larger to accommodate an adult size change table and support persons. Locking mechanisms for the washrooms. There are going to be deadbolts installed. And we are investigating and adding a new red button beside the door to lock. The pavilion lights coming on in the middle of the night has been fixed. The lights now turn off at 11 o'clock. Occupancy limit of washrooms. We will be adding additional signage to recognize a single occupancy washroom. There was $17,000 budgeted towards the completion of phase one in the 2022 budget year. With the change orders and the resulting engineering costs throughout phase one of the Kerwood Park improvements, the project was completed $18,810.50 over budget. This overage will be recovered by cost savings and other projects in operational departments. I'll open it up for questions, and if not, there's the recommendation in front of me.
Okay, thank you, Coulter. Is there any questions at all? Okay, Councillor Brody.
Through you, Mayor Smith. We are gonna look in phase two at maybe making some more change to the bathrooms, though, correct?
That is correct. Councillor Brody.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments at all on this report? Okay, seeing none. We need a motion that phase one improvements for the Kerwood Park completion report be received for information. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks, seconded by Councilor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, and now I'm going to hand it over for what I would like to call the Johnny Pereira show for the next several reports. The first one is the year-end surplus and reserves fund transfer for 2021, and then we'll just let Johnny continue after that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the council, first report here is the year-end surplus and reserve fund transfer for 2021. The purpose of this report is to transfer the money raised from the tax levy or additional revenue earned in 2021 based on the surplus to the reserve and reserve funds. In 2021, the year-end surplus was $737,197, and this is from a cash basis, so it is different than what you saw in the financial statements earlier today. So this is much larger than I would like to see for a surplus. The 2022 budget was our first attempt to tighten the budget to minimize the year-end surplus. As shown in the report, staff broke down how we got to the surplus for a better understanding of the significant drivers. The major contributors are supplemental and omitted tax billing, a number of road projects that came in under budget, staff vacancies, and some deferred projects. By transferring the surplus to the capital purposes reserve fund, this will aid in future capital needs of the township. This surplus was also considered when we built the asset management plan as well. So it did help that year-over-year increase. So the recommendation is to approve the report as presented. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, is there any questions at all? Seeing none, so we have the motion in front of us that the 2021 surplus be transferred to the capital purposes reserve fund in the amount of $737,197 be approved. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Brody, all those in favor? And that's carried. All right, the next one, the budget to actual.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the council, we have in front of us the June 2022 operating budget actual report. Overall spending and revenue collection to date looks to be on pace with the approved budget. The recommendation is to receive the report as presented. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you may have.
Okay, Councillor Clark.
I'm not sure if this is the right place to ask this. I should have printed the page out. So oh yeah, it is. In the budget, the wheelie bin expense is quite high, right? Like it's over what we're recovering, or it's just, can you speak to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Clark. So from the wheelie bin perspective, we would have budgeted fairly close. Wheelie bins are billed on final taxes, so you won't see that revenue yet. The expenditures are billed on a monthly basis. So from budget to actual, we'll be in somewhat of alignment for the end of the year.
Okay.
Overall, when you look at what we're recovering versus the overall costs, that's where the shortfall comes in.
Right. Well, so and to jump back, this maybe isn't the right time to ask, but I didn't want to bring it up during the financial statement was in the financial statement, there's the garbage collection section, and in 2020 we were 223,000, and in 2021 we were 264. So the wheelie bin is in that number.
That would be correct. And the
Okay.
difference between 2021 and 2022 was 2021 had a change in the frequency of collection. So the 2021 budget didn't incorporate that, where the 2022 budget would.
Thank you. That's why they don't. Okay, got it. Forgot about that.
Alrighty, is there any other questions at all? Okay, seeing none, the motion is to receive the report for information. Okay,
I'll move
Councillor
that.
Brady and Councillor Clark, all those in favor? And that's carried. It looks like Councillor McKinnon, you decided to turn the light on. It must be getting dark outside. Okay, we'll hand it back over to Johnny for the capital budget to actual.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to council. So this capital report is something new for the township. It's a quarterly report that outlines our capital projects for the year. So spending to date, the status of these projects, and any other relevant comments. Staff reviews their capital spending on a monthly basis, and the report is brought to council to outline any significant overages and a financial strategy to address it, as Coulter did just previously. Through the end of June, we have completed about 4 of those listed projects. There are a number of current projects that really be wrapped into one for that the tender. So a number of projects are slated to be completed or to start in the coming months. So again, the recommendation is to receive the report, but if there's any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, is there any questions at all? Okay, seeing none, motion to receive the report. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor McKinnon, all those in favor? And that one's carried. And then we'll hand it back over to Johnny for the COVID-19 financial reporting for 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the council. In 2020 and 2021, the federal government and provincial government provided many financial supports for municipalities, including the Safe Restart Program and the Provincial COVID-19 Recovery Fund. In 2021, the township received an additional $63,121. Reporting on these funds were required by the province to better understand how municipalities were using these funds. $39,121 was spent in 2021 for COVID supplies, PPE, the municipal office internet upgrades to offer on-site live stream council meetings, and an upgrade to the council chambers to install the microphone and camera systems that we're using today. At the end of 2021, there's just over $60,000 that remains in the COVID-19 Safe Restart Reserve Fund. All reporting has been submitted to the province. The recommendation is to receive the report as presented. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Councillor Brody.
Yeah, through your Mayor Smith, just a question on the remaining. Is there rules on like when that has to be spent, how that has to be spent? Does that have to go back? Can we buy more stuff?
You, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Brody. My last conversation I had with our contact was they weren't looking to recover those funds, but the plan is still unknown at this time.
Unknown, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other questions at all? Okay, so we need to have a motion that the COVID-19 financial reporting for 2021 be received for information. Okay, Councillor Brody and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor? And that's carried. And your last one, the 2023 budget process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to council. This report is to outline the 2023 budget creation process. The budget serves as an outline for how monies that come into the township should be spent to maintain and improve the township. This is being brought forward much earlier than in prior years, as the goal is to get the township in alignment to pass an earlier budget. This provides the township with the potential to realize significant cost savings, as we would be able to tender out projects before other municipalities pass their budgets. This would result in a direct cost savings to the taxpayer. In addition, it provides administrative efficiencies due to the seasonality of municipal operations, such as when we do intern taxes and the audit process. Since 2022 is a municipal election year, the budget process will change slightly from last year. More information will be brought forward to council, such as a budget 101 presentation in September and a presentation of the budget survey results. This provides any member of the public running for council the same opportunity as the current members of council to hear all budget information and understand how the budget process works. The first draft of the operating and capital budget will be presented to the new council and is projected to be at the December 12th meeting. If additional meetings are required, they will be scheduled in January. It's important to note that the 2023 budget will be owned and adopted by the new council. To kick off the 2023 budget process, we'll be rolling out an online budget survey to engage our residents in this year's budget process. This will be coming in August, so stay tuned to our socials, the township website, and the final tax bill newsletter for more information. In addition, we've drafted a budget roadmap to highlight the overall process to develop the 2023 budget. You can find this in the attachment to the report. The recommendation is that the 2023 budget process be received for information, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Johnny. Councillor Clark.
Mine's not so much a question, it's just a comment. I really appreciate all the work that Johnny and the teams put into this. This is exactly how it should be done, the right time it should be done. We've been a long time as an organization getting to this point, and I appreciate the effort that's been made.
All right, is there any other questions or comments? All right, and I will echo those comments of Councillor Clark. So we have the recommendation that is that the 2023 budget process report be received for information. Okay, Councillor Brody and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor? And that's carried. All right, and that brings us to the end of our staff reports. And then next is our closed session. And we need to have a motion that council adjourn to a closed session at 8:52, 8:53, whatever you want to choose. Section 239, 2E and C of the Municipal Act, and then that's in regards to the Adelaide Metcalfe Strathwick Air Dock servicing agreement, as well as the Panel Lane lands disposition. Mover and seconder to go into closed. Councillor Brody and Councillor McKinnon, all those in favor. And that is carried, and we will be back on YouTube following that.